Cyberpunk 2077 is stunning. It is stylish. It had the comeback of the goddamn century. And yet despite that, it doesn't feel alive to me. For all that high caliber polish and all that shiny chrome, there seems to be something eerily vacant beneath the surface. The game works, finally, but does it make us feel? That's a different question. Even with the 2.0 overhaul and Phantom Liberty's emotional punch, Cyberpunk 2077 is still missing something essential. The thing that makes great RPGs unforgettable. And it's not a new perk system, it's not a new police overhaul, it's not even Idris Elba. Cyberpunk is missing a heart. So today we're diving into that absence, the emotional void that keeps Night City from truly coming alive, the shallow relationships, the inconsequential choices, the feeling that no matter how immersive the city seems on the surface, I walk around feeling lonely. So by the end of this video, whether you've spent 200 hours jacked into the net or if you've only gotten through the prologue, you'll understand what I think is the paradox at the core of Cyberpunk 2077, how a game so full can feel so empty. Let's start with Night City itself, the bustling metropolis that never truly bustles. At first glance, it's incredible. Towering holograms, streets packed with NPCs. It's a sensory overload of lights and ads. It feels like the f***ing future. But after a while, it starts to feel more like you're wandering through an extravagant movie set. It's beautifully constructed, yet behind the scenery, there's nothing. You wander these streets and realize nobody's really home. Night City citizens are basically walking props. It's like wandering around a Walmart at 9 p.m. If you stop to eavesdrop, you'll catch a snippet of an interesting conversation, but walk a little closer and they abruptly shut up, like the presence of you flips a switch in the game's engine.
Well, what? 13.
And it's those little things in RPGs that matter most and make it feel real. In Red Dead Redemption 2, for instance, you greet strangers on the road and they respond, sometimes with entire conversations or events. Or in Baldur's Gate 3, your party will chat amongst themselves dynamically, reacting to the surroundings.
If I choose to kill you, you will not even see it.
And it's enough for me in those games to suspend my disbelief and feel like I'm living in a breathing world. Night City, by contrast, feels like a brilliant stage where the play just never starts. In Grand Theft Auto, Red Dead, Skyrim, and even The Witcher, small side stories await discovery around every corner. And Cyberpunk struggles to capture these feelings. I want to believe that the world around me continues to live even when I'm not looking. When I leave Valentine in Red Dead Redemption 2, I leave with the illusion that the townsfolk go about their routines day and night without me present. As I'm sitting here talking to you now, I can picture the inn in Whiterun and Skyrim popping off with rumors and chatter as the years go by. Cyberpunk never convinced me of that illusion, and it felt genuinely disappointing. And CD Projekt Red has improved the NPC AI in 2.0. The police now chase you, finally, and the crowds react slightly more believably to violence. The truth is, Night City feels less like a city that lives with you, and more like a backdrop for V's personal drama. It's beautiful, yes, but like those beautiful presents under the tree at your local mall at Christmas, there ain't anything inside. So maybe the open world isn't lively, but surely the main characters make up for that, right? Cyberpunk's story is packed with interesting personalities. We got Jackie Wells, your loyal choom. We got Johnny Silverhand, literally living inside your head. Judy, Panam, River, Carrie, the game's key companions and romance options. Plus the memorable NPCs like Takemura and Rogue. And these characters are all well written within their individual story arcs. The problem is what happens afterwards, or rather, what doesn't happen. Take Jackie. The game rushes you through a montage of V and Jackie becoming best buddies at the beginning of the game. The way the friendship was pushed on us so fast, I remember thinking, oh, this guy is definitely the bad guy in the game that's going to turn on us. But then he just dies. Jackie's death tries to hit you like a truck, but I felt nothing. The whole storyline just felt rushed and unearned. I was never really given a chance to let my guard down and truly care about this relationship. And this is symptomatic of Cyberpunk's general pacing. Big emotional beats with not enough setup. You look at some of the best storytelling, like a show like Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. They would spend episode after episode slowly building the conflict until it crescendos, to the point that when shit does hit the fan, or my boy Hank gets vaxxed, it does hit you like a ton of bricks. Or to keep it in the gaming sphere, the way that Rockstar builds their stories. It's slow and intentional, and they do it with nuance, so that when someone actually does die, it affects you emotionally, and it informs how you play the game from that point on. When Jackie died, I just got annoyed that I had to do a bunch of quests doing chores for this dude after he was dead. Now let's look at some of the other companions. Judy Alvarez, the cold and steely brain dance expert with a heart of gold. Panam Palmer, the fiery nomad who becomes your ride or die. These character storylines are highlights of the game's narrative, yet after their quest lines wrap up, they exit stage left until the finale. Outside of a few flirty text messages, cutscenes or brief high-V phone calls, they don't accompany you on any missions, and there's no new dialogue as the plot progresses. They just feel siloed, and they don't get to know one another differently based on your choices. There's no Witcher 3 Kaer Morhen gathering that brings everyone together and makes the plot feel that much more grand. Each character just kind of lives in their own little quest bubble, rarely acknowledging the others or the larger story once their arc is done. Remember in Mass Effect 2 when the whole squad comes together for the suicide mission? You feel this warm camaraderie, a sense of team. V's Night City crew never gets that moment. Panam and Judy never meet. River and Carrie never exchange a word. They exist in completely separate storylines. Even Johnny Silverhand, as omnipresent as he is, doesn't really interact with your other friends, much beyond a little quip here or there. It just feels like a big missed opportunity to not create that sense of found family that so many great RPGs have. And as a result, once you finish Judy's last mission or Panam's last ride, you might think, great character, I wish I could keep adventuring with them, but instead you're back to talking to fixer contacts and doing gigs solo. Night City is full of interesting companions, but once you help them with their problems, they ghost you. In contrast, RPGs like Baldur's Gate 3 keep your companions by your side for nearly the entire journey, bantering and reacting and developing with you. Those characters end up feeling like friends. In Cyberpunk, your closest allies end up feeling like clients. You do a job for them, you have a quick encounter, and then it's catch you later, V. And the romances in this game feel shallow and underdeveloped. Take a game like Witcher 3 where you end up agonizing over whether you're going to be with Yennefer or Triss, and that choice has profound impact on how you choose to play the story. But what happens in Cyberpunk? We all just end up with Panam, don't we? I just wanted more from these relationships. More conversations, more hangouts, more consequences. Instead, after a passionate night under the neon lights, your romance sends you a couple texts and that's it. Wait. Am I needy? So yeah, emotional investment in characters suffers when the game fails to acknowledge those bonds in any significant way. And The Witcher 3 wasn't perfect about this either. Once you finished a character's quest, they usually just chill at home until the finale. But at least Witcher 3 gave us multiple quests and decisions that would affect our loved ones, and an ending epilogue that reflected Geralt's chosen family, like getting to see what happens with Yennefer, Triss, or Ciri. Cyberpunk's endings, even after Phantom Liberty, feel disconnected from all but a couple key players. How many of V's friends show up in the end? One, maybe two, briefly? For many, including myself, that made the final stretch feel weirdly isolating, which you could also argue is an intentional theme for the game, but as a player, it just kind of left me feeling eh. Role-playing games thrive on player choice, and not just for gameplay, but to forge an emotional narrative unique to you. Cyberpunk 2077 promised meaningful choices, but in reality, much of the game is a fixed storyline until the end. You're very rarely given dialogue options that genuinely shape the outcome of the story. Like you can't convince Dex to abandon his betrayal, and there's no way to charm Sasquatch into peace. Mostly your selections just tweak V's attitude, or they'll reveal minor pieces of lore, giving you the illusion of choice, but without the meaningful impact. And sure, there are different approaches to combat and sneaking, and occasionally you do get a cool alternate path, like befriending Brick in the mail store mission, or using the Corporal life path for a slight edge in one of the deals. But these variations are small, and the emotional through line stays the same. No matter your life path, be it street kid, corpo, or nomad, Jackie will become your friend and die. Johnny's gonna plague your psyche, and you're gonna stay on the main quest that everyone else that plays the game's going to stay on. If you look at other RPGs like Baldur's Gate 3 or Fallout New Vegas, in those games your choices can radically reshape who lives, who dies, and which factions prosper. The story's emotional heart shifts based on your actions, and that creates a sense of responsibility and investment in the player. If you've played Baldur's Gate 3 and one of your companions has died because of a poor choice by you, you're devastated. You might even reload an old save. In Cyberpunk, the story's going to hit those same tragic beats regardless of your choices. You're just deciding the flavor of the tragedy in the end. It's just hard for me to feel ownership over V's story when so much of it's on the rails. Besides the type of build I choose and what perks to invest in, it just feels like I'm on a predestined path in a game that's trying to convince me that that's not what it's doing. And linear storytelling isn't inherently bad at all. The Last of Us was linear and emotionally devastating, but The Last of Us didn't sell itself as an RPG. Cyberpunk did. I went into the game expecting to shape V's destiny more personally, and without that I just felt like a passenger, which sapped a lot of the emotional engagement for me. When the big plot twists happen, you're not thinking, oh, I caused this, or I could have avoided this, because you couldn't. And I kept trying to make meaningful choices. But when you start to see that it has no consequence on the story, it just kind of starts to feel a bit hollow for me. Enter Phantom Liberty, the much-hyped expansion, and patch 2.0, the overhaul that accompanied it. CD Projekt Red, after a ton of backlash, basically overhauled the entire Cyberpunk game. New gameplay systems, redesigned perks, improved AI, and an entirely new storyline with a DLC. And Phantom Liberty, to its credit, is a damn good DLC. Many players and critics hailed it as the game's saving grace, with a tighter and more emotional narrative. It's basically a spy thriller, featuring sleeper agents, political intrigue. It introduces Songbird and FIA agent Reed, played by Idris Elba, two characters that definitely add some emotional punch. There's an ending choice in Phantom Liberty that I literally had to go and take my dog for an hour walk before I could decide what to do. So yeah, the DLC delivered the most emotional moments in all of Cyberpunk. But here's the kicker. The emotional intensity, while real and while I felt it, highlights what the rest of the game is missing. Phantom Liberty is a largely self-contained story. After finishing it, the outcomes do affect the ending of the base game, giving you one new ending path in particular, but otherwise it doesn't suddenly make Panam or Judy more talkative, and it doesn't make the random interactions feel more alive. It feels like a heart transplant that only pumps blood to one limb. So did Phantom Liberty completely fix the emotional hollowness? Not completely. It gave us a riveting side story, with more moral complexity and depth than the base game had, but it's a bit like a really great sequel to an okay first movie. It intensifies a portion of the experience without lifting up the whole. After finishing Phantom Liberty, I personally sat there at the main menu, feeling conflicted and a little empty. The new ending I got was both poignant and sad, and I loved that, but then the credits roll, and Night City's still out there, pretty much unchanged, as if all those relationships I built still don't really matter in the end. In some ways, Phantom Liberty underscored that emotional hollowness by contrast, but it is a reminder that Cyberpunk can hit you in the feels when the developers decide to focus on the emotional core rather than the game's 600 lackluster systems. To really drive this point home, let's compare Cyberpunk to a few heavy hitters in the same genre. Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, CD Projekt Red's own previous masterpiece, is a great starting point. The Witcher 3 definitely had its share of open world jank, but it never forgot the people at its core. Think of the Bloody Baron quest, an entirely optional side story that was more emotionally complex than many full games. It dealt with family, abuse, and tragedy, and players still talk about it years later. How it made them feel pity or anger or sorrow. Geralt's relationship with Ciri, built up over 3 games. The Witcher 3 knew how to balance world building with heart building. Your choices with characters could lead to dramatically different endings for them, but Cyberpunk largely funnels everyone to a similar fate, which is a big difference in design philosophy. Next there's Red Dead Redemption 2, Rockstar's epic. This game is basically a feels train hidden inside a cowboy Grand Theft Auto. By the end of Red Dead Redemption 2's story, I was emotionally wrecked by Arthur Morgan's journey, because the game takes its time to develop every relationship in an organic way. You ride with your gang, you share campfires and stories. There's so many moments of quiet reflection. Arthur Morgan's relationships with characters like Sadie, Hosea, and John Marsden evolve over dozens of hours, and the world is constantly reinforcing the narrative. Random NPC encounters turn into little stories that can tug at your heartstrings or make you laugh, and it makes the whole frontier feel human. And when tragedy does strike in the game, it hurts. I've played Red Dead Redemption 3 times, and I've cried at the ending 3 times. I certainly didn't cry in Cyberpunk, and I know some people did, but it's much less universal than in a game like Red Dead. And it's because the game spends much less time nurturing those bonds or creating a sense of irreversible change throughout the journey. And then there's games like Baldur's Gate 3 that show us what deep RPG storytelling looks like in a modern era. Baldur's Gate 3 is brimming with reactive narrative. If you slight a companion, they'll confront you. If you repeatedly make choices that they abhor, they might leave or turn against you. Conversely, show them loyalty or kindness, and you unlock new layers of their story or romance. And the result? You become very emotionally attached to your party. This makes the story feel personal, and it hits so much harder. Cyberpunk, by comparison, keeps the main plot quite static. Even the big choice of how to approach the final mission mostly just changes who helps you in the last battle, but doesn't fundamentally alter Night City or the epilogue beyond V's personal fate. And none of those choices give you a happy ending where V gets both life and friends. The game's tone is unyieldingly tragic, which it's a valid artistic choice, and the writers can write the story however they want, but it can alienate players who wanted at least one win to feel good about. And I've made entire builds based around changing the outcome of the endings of games. In Fallout 4, after discovering that Paladin Danse was a synth or robot and he couldn't live with the fact that he was, I was devastated when I couldn't convince him not to kill himself. I literally restarted the entire game and reinvested all my perks and stuff like charisma, essentially making a sociopath build just so I could convince that gun-loving robot bigot that his life mattered. Now, everyone's experience differs. There are folks who sobbed at the ending of Cyberpunk and who felt absolutely nothing at the end of Red Dead. But broadly speaking, the community sentiment is that Cyberpunk lacks those emotional punches. Cyberpunk Edge Runners, Netflix's anime show based on the game, made me care more about the characters in 10 minutes than the Cyberpunk game did in my 100 hours playing it. The key difference is heart. Cyberpunk has style, atmosphere, and cool factor in spades, but it struggles to center the human connection like the other games I talked about. And unlike other RPGs where you can find your place or your community, Cyberpunk, intentionally or not, often makes you feel like a transient, a merc who's only as good as their last job. And that may be true to the Cyberpunk themes, but it feels bad. So why does all this matter? Why harp on a game's heart or lack thereof? Because stories stick with us throughout the feelings they evoke. In years from now, as the graphics of Cyberpunk stop being so cutting edge, what are we going to be left with? What are we going to remember? Will we reminisce about the time we upgraded to the double jump cyberware? Unlikely. We remember the emotional moments in games. Johnny Silverhand's rare moments of vulnerability, the brief hope of a cure, or the sting of saying goodbye to a lover in the end. Cyberpunk 2077 has those moments, but they're fragmented and often undercut by the game's design choices around them. I think of games as a blend of art and empathy, and the best ones make you care about the world, care about the people in it, and even care about yourself as the protagonist. And Cyberpunk got the art part, the aesthetic, the lore, the themes of identity and morality, but the empathy, it struggled there. And heartfelt storytelling isn't just the icing on the cake. It is the cake. And despite all this critique, I don't hate Cyberpunk. In fact, I enjoyed a shit ton of it. It's clear the developers poured a ton of passion into Night City, but passion isn't the same as heart. And all the futuristic tech in the world can't replace genuine human connection. That goes for in life and in games. The 2.0 patch and Phantom Liberty has proven that Cyberpunk's creators can listen and improve. And maybe Cyberpunk 2 will take all these lessons and apply it to an entire game. Maybe V's next chapter, whoever the protagonist is, will finally bridge that gap and make Night City feel like a city that's both lived in and loved in. Is that corny? Because that's what we ultimately want. Stories that don't just entertain us, but move us. That stick. Give us all the eye candy you want, but don't forget the heart candy. Cyberpunk's got the style. I just hope next time it's got the soul. Thank you for watching, and if you did love this game emotionally, I'd honestly love to hear why. Because hey, maybe I'm the psycho for not feeling what I was supposed to feel. Take care of yourselves, and remember, in both life and games, it's not the chrome on the outside, it's the heart on the inside that counts.